I have not eaten in days. The words came out as a whisper, barely sound, just breath shaped into confession. Ethan Rivers heard them anyway. He stood there on the forest trail, his worn axe
We
still
survived.
gripped in calloused
Barely,
hands.
thanks to you.
The
And
autumn
you.
wind moved through the
We're
Douglas
stronger
firs
together.
above him, carrying the scent of coming rain and rotting pine needles. Somewhere distant, a creek rushed over stones. But those sounds faded when he looked down at her. She was impossible to miss. 7 feet of green-skinned warrior slumped against the hollow oak like a fallen monument. Her broad shoulders trembled with each breath, massive hands pressed against bark trying to hold herself upright. Failing, her skin had gone pale. Not the vibrant green of summer leaves, but something sickly, drained. The color of things dying slowly. Tusks curved up from her lower jaw, ivory white against cracked lips. Her hair black as pitch hung in matted braids half undone by days of running. Leaves tangled in the strands, dirt smeared across her cheekbones. But it was her eyes that stopped him cold. Amber, like honey held up to late afternoon sun. They tracked him with predator focus even as her body sagged with exhaustion. Watching, waiting to see what this human would do. Ethan's first instinct was fear. Orcs were dangerous, everyone knew that. The village elders in Timber Falls told stories. Wars fought generations ago. Blood spilled on both sides. Old hatreds that ran deeper than tree roots. His second instinct was something else entirely. He saw the way her ribs pressed against the torn leather armor. Saw the dark stains spreading across her side where an arrow had punched through and been roughly pulled free. Saw the slight tremble in those massive hands. He'd been hungry before. He knew how it felt. Ethan knelt down slowly, no sudden movements. He set the axe aside on dead leaves. Then he reached into his worn canvas satchel and pulled out half a loaf of sourdough bread. It was the last food he had, his breakfast, his lunch, the only thing standing between him and 2 days of empty belly until he could reach the village market again. His hands shook as he held it out to her. The trembling wasn't from fear, not anymore. It was older than that, deeper. A tremor that started 2 years ago in a burning sawmill and never quite stopped. The kind that lived in muscle memory and waited for moments of decision. The orc woman stared at the bread like it might be poisoned. Ethan broke off a piece, put it in his mouth, chewed slowly, swallowed, showed her it was safe. Then he offered the rest again. Her hand moved, slow, careful. Those fingers could crush his skull without effort, but they took the bread with something close to gentleness. She ate, first slowly as if her body had forgotten the motion, then faster, desperate. Her throat worked as she swallowed, her eyes closed. Something that looked like pain or relief or both washed across her face. When she finished the last bite, her shoulders dropped, just slightly, as if a wire holding her upright had finally snapped. She opened her eyes. They were wet. Why? The word came out harsh, suspicious, edged with disbelief that cut sharper than any blade. Why would you help me? Ethan shrugged. His voice came out quiet, rough from disuse. Couldn't just walk past someone starving? He paused. I've been hungry before. I know what it feels like. Something shifted in her expression. The suspicion didn't disappear, but it made room for something else. Confusion, maybe. Or the faintest beginning of trust. My name is Kira, she said. Just that, nothing more. Ethan, he replied. Ethan Rivers, woodcutter, nobody important. She studied him with those amber eyes, studied his threadbare coat with patches sewn over patches. The axe with its nicked blade, the way he held himself. Careful, cautious, but not cruel. Do you have water? He did, a leather skin half full from the creek. He passed it to her and watched her drink, watched the way her throat moved, watched her wince as if even swallowing hurt. When she handed the skin back, her fingers brushed his. Her skin burned fever hot. Infection, he realized. She was wounded somewhere beneath that torn armor and mud-caked clothing. Wounded and weak and alone in human territory where she had no friends. He should have walked away. Smart men didn't involve themselves with wounded orcs. Smart men protected themselves, kept their heads down, survived. But Ethan Rivers had stopped being smart the day he ran into a burning mill trying to save his father. You need shelter, he said, and medicine. My cabin's about an hour's walk. I can help you there if you can make it. Pride flared in her eyes, hot and immediate. "I can walk." She made it 10 steps before her legs buckled. Ethan caught her, or tried to. She was so much larger than him that all he really did was slow her fall. He wedged his shoulder under her arm and braced his feet against the forest floor. She ended up half leaning on him, breathing hard, her weight enough to make his knees shake. "I'm sorry." The words came out strangled, furious, as if she'd never had to say them before and hated the taste. Ethan shook his head. "Nothing to apologize for. We'll go slow." They did, step by agonizing step. His shoulder burned with her weight, his lungs ached. His own hunger made his head swim. The scent of her sweat and blood, and something earthy like stone and rain filled his senses. But he didn't let go. He kept one arm around her waist, or as far around as it would reach, guided her through the forest toward home. She didn't speak during the walk, neither did he, but he felt her watching him, felt the intensity of her gaze on the side of his face, felt her trying to understand why a human would do this. He was wondering the same thing himself. Ethan Rivers had learned about loss early. His mother died when he was 8. Fever took her in 3 days. His father, David Rivers, a quiet man who worked the carpenter's trade, had shut down afterward, closed off like a house boarded up for winter. They'd lived together in a kind of polite silence, father and son bound by grief and necessity, but not much else. The mill fire happened on a Tuesday. Ethan remembered that detail with razor clarity. Tuesday evening, just after sunset. The sky still holding on to the last purple threads of daylight. He'd been in the workshop finishing a chair. Oak, simple design, steady work for steady hands. Then the bells started ringing. By the time he reached the mill, the whole structure was ablaze. Orange flames punching through windows, black smoke rolling up into the twilight. Heat that pushed against his face like a living thing. The smell of burning wood and something worse. Something that smelled like meat. His father was inside. Someone said he'd gone back for the ledgers, the mill owner's precious records, numbers on paper that somehow mattered more than living flesh. Ethan had run in after him. The smoke grabbed his lungs immediately, thick, choking, the kind that turned air into poison. He'd pulled his shirt up over his mouth and pushed deeper. He found his father pinned under a fallen beam. The man's eyes were wide, terrified. His mouth moved, but no sound came out. Just smoke and pain. Ethan grabbed the beam, pulled. His hands blistered instantly from the heat. The wood wouldn't move, wouldn't budge. He pulled until his vision went dark at the edges. Pulled until someone grabbed him from behind and dragged him out bodily while he screamed. His father died in that fire. The mill owner survived, and somehow in the ash and aftermath blame had found its way to Ethan's door. Careless with the lamps, they said, always had his head in the clouds. The owner said it loud enough and often enough that people started to believe it. The girl Ethan had been courting, Sarah Chen with dark hair and a laugh like bells, stopped coming around. 2 months later, she was engaged to the merchant's son. She'd looked at Ethan once across the village square. He'd seen it in her eyes clear as daylight. She believed the rumors too. So he'd left, built a log cabin on the forest's edge with salvaged wood and bitter hands. Became a woodcutter because trees didn't judge him and solitude didn't spread lies. He'd been alone ever since. Sometimes late at night when the fire burned low and the wind howled outside, he wondered if he'd spend the rest of his life this way. Alone, forgotten, carrying guilt for a fire he didn't start and grief for a father he couldn't save. But he'd made a kind of peace with it. He helped when he could, left extra firewood at old widow Hannah's door without knocking. Pulled a boy out of the creek last summer when he fell through thin ice. Small things, quiet things. Because if he couldn't save his father, maybe he could save someone else. Maybe that could be enough. When he saw Kira starving against that tree, all he'd thought was, not again. Not when I can help. He didn't know her story yet, didn't know she was royalty. All he knew was that she needed help, and he had 2 hands and half a loaf of bread. That had been enough to start. The cabin squatted at the edge of Cascade Wilderness like a wounded animal trying to hide. One room, maybe 400 square feet, walls built from salvaged timber and prayers. The thatched roof sagged in the middle, patched with moss and tar. Smoke leaked from the chimney in thin, apologetic wisps. Inside, the space held everything Ethan owned. A cot with blankets worn transparent, a table with 3 legs, and a stack of books propping up the 4th. A stone hearth that struggled to keep the autumn cold at bay. Shelves holding a few chipped dishes, some dried herbs tied in bundles, and 5 books with cracked spines. It wasn't much, but it was clean. He'd learned that from his father. No matter how poor you are, there's no excuse for dirt. Ethan guided Kira to the cot and helped her sit. She lowered herself down with a grimace that told him everything about the pain she was carrying. He hovered awkwardly, unsure what to do with an injured orc warrior in his home. "I need to check your wound," he said. His voice came out hesitant, respectful, asking permission. In Timber Falls, the healer never asked, just commanded. People's time was too valuable to waste on pleasantries. Kira nodded. Ethan knelt beside the cot. Carefully, so carefully, he lifted the edge of her leather armor. His hands were rough from work, calloused and scarred, but his touch stayed gentle. He hissed when he saw the wound. A deep gash in her side where an arrow had torn through. The flesh around it was red and angry, hot with infection. Pus gathered at the edges. The smell of it, sweet and rotten, made his stomach turn. "It's bad," he said quietly. "I'll need to clean it properly or you'll get sicker. This is going to hurt. Can you handle it?" Kira almost laughed. She'd been in battles, taken wounds that would kill most males. Pain was an old companion, a familiar guest at the table. "Do what's needed," she said. Ethan gathered his supplies, water heated over the fire until it steamed, clean cloth torn from what looked like his only spare flannel shirt, blue and worn soft with age, herbs crushed into paste in a wooden bowl, yarrow for bleeding, comfrey for healing, echinacea for infection. The scent of crushed herbs filled the small space, sharp and green. When he cleaned the wound, Kira didn't flinch. But it hurt. Gods, it hurt. The infection had gone deeper than she'd thought, burrowing into muscle, spreading its poison through her blood. Ethan worked in silence, his face concentrated, his hands steady despite the tremor that never quite left them. When he packed the wound with herb paste and wrapped it tight with bandages, Kira felt the fever already beginning to break. Orcs healed faster than humans, something in their blood, their bodies built for surviving battle. But even so, this would take days. "You need rest," he said, "and real food, not just bread. I'll make soup." Kira watched him move around the tiny kitchen space. He cut vegetables she didn't recognize. Wild onions, root vegetables dug from the forest floor, added them to a pot with water and a handful of dried venison. Worked with quiet efficiency, never wasting motion. The smell of cooking broth slowly replaced the scent of infection. "What are you making?" when she asked. "Vegetable soup, nothing fancy, but it's warm, filling." When it was ready, he poured her a bowl and brought it to her. The bowl was chipped. The spoon was wooden and carved by hand. His work, she guessed. The soup smelled like earth and comfort. She ate slowly, savoring it. In the royal halls of Iron Peak, meals had been elaborate affairs. 7 courses, exotic spices, presentations meant to impress visiting dignitaries. This soup was simple, humble, honest. It was the best thing she'd eaten in weeks. Ethan sat on the floor with his own bowl, leaving her the only chair. He ate without talking, giving her space. Kira studied him in the firelight. He was young, probably close to her own age. Mid-20s maybe. Thin, yes, but there was strength in his frame. The kind that came from hard work rather than training. His hair was brown and shaggy, like he cut it himself with a dull knife. His eyes were gray, the color of storm clouds. Sad eyes, she thought, eyes that had seen loss. "How long have you lived here alone?" she asked. 2 years, since the fire." He didn't elaborate. In orc culture, you spoke your mind or stayed silent. This human habit of dancing around truth frustrated her. But she was in his home, eating his food, wearing his bandages. She let it go. "Are you afraid of me?" she asked instead. He considered the question, really thought about it. "Yes," he said finally. "A little. You're much stronger than me. Could hurt me easily if you wanted to." He paused. "But I don't think you will." "Why, people who mean harm don't look the way you did when you said thank you." Kira blinked. She hadn't realized her gratitude showed so plainly on her face. At court, she'd learned to school her expressions. Keep everything locked behind armor. Apparently, exhaustion and pain had stripped that skill away. The first few days passed in a strange, cautious rhythm. Ethan went into the forest each morning. He left her water, food, fresh bandages. Told her to rest. He locked the door from the outside. Not to trap her, she realized, but to keep others out. She slept most of the first day. Really slept. Deeply and dreamlessly in a way she hadn't since fleeing Iron Peak's stronghold. The second day she woke feeling stronger. The fever was gone. The wound still ached, but the sharpness had dulled to something manageable. She explored the cabin. It didn't take long. She examined his books. History mostly. Some poetry. She read a few pages. The human writing system was different from Orcish runes, but she could make out some of it. When Ethan returned that evening, he found her sitting up. Reading, he looked surprised. Then pleased. "You can borrow any of them," he said. That night they ate together again. She asked him about the book, A History of the Eastern Kingdoms. He explained what she didn't understand. She shared what she knew of those kingdoms from the Orcish perspective. Their histories didn't match. The humans painted orcs as invaders. The orcs remembered defending their territory from human expansion. They didn't argue about it, just acknowledged the different truths. It was the most honest conversation Kira had had in years. By the third day, she insisted on helping. Ethan protested. She was still healing, needed rest. Kira growled that she was going mad sitting still. In the clans, warriors didn't rest unless they were dying. She was not dying. He relented. Let her help prepare food. She was terrible at it. In Iron Peak, servants cooked. Princesses commanded armies. She burned the porridge black, filled the cabin with acrid smoke. Ethan opened the door and windows coughing. He didn't scold her, just showed her how to stir properly, how to watch for bubbles, how to know when it was done. She learned. The next morning she made porridge that was merely mediocre instead of charred. Ethan told her it was perfect. She knew he was lying, but she appreciated it anyway. The language lesson started by accident. She gestured at the water skin and used the Orcish word, castor. Ethan repeated it, mangled the pronunciation completely. Kira laughed, actually laughed. The sound surprised her, rough and genuine, like thunder rolling distant over mountains. His accent was terrible. He grinned, sheepish, asked her to teach him properly. So she did, taught him water fire bread home, taught him the words for honor and strength and clan. He taught her human words in return, taught her kindness, a concept orcs didn't have a direct word for, taught her hearth, which meant more than just fireplace, meant warmth, safety, belonging, taught her friend. She stumbled over that one. Friend. The vowel sound didn't exist in Orcish. Her mouth couldn't quite shape it right. He was patient, repeated it slowly. She tried again. When she got it right, he smiled. That smile did something strange to her chest, made it tight and warm all at once. The physical closeness crept up on them. It started with necessity. She needed help changing bandages. He had to touch her skin, her side, the wound. His hands were always careful, clinical, but she felt every point of contact like a brand. Then she helped him chop wood, insisted despite his protests, showed him how to position his body for more power, stood behind him, adjusted his grip on the axe handle, felt his warmth through his worn shirt, the scent of him sawdust in wood smoke and something clean like rain. He went very still when she touched him, like a rabbit sensing a fox. She stepped back, apologized. Orc culture was more physical, casual touch was normal. She'd forgotten humans were different. "It's fine," he said. His voice came out rough. At night they sat by the fire, she on the cot, he on the floor. The space between them shrank each evening, first 3 feet, then 2. Then their shoulders almost touched. One night, exhausted from helping him haul logs, she fell asleep sitting up, slumped sideways, ended up with her head on his shoulder. She woke an hour later to find him frozen in place, afraid to move and disturb her. She sat up quickly, apologized. He said it was fine, but his ears were red. 2 weeks passed like that, 2 weeks of quiet mornings and shared meals, of language lessons and laughter, of the space between them growing smaller while something larger grew in its place, something neither of them had words for yet. On the 12th day, Kira's wound had healed enough that she could move without pain. The infection was gone. Her strength had returned in steady measures. She was outside gathering firewood when she heard them. 3 sets of footsteps, moving through the forest with purpose, not trying to hide. Her warrior instincts screamed danger. She moved toward the cabin, quick and silent. Ethan was inside preparing lunch. He looked up when she entered. saw her expression. What? She put a finger to her lips, pointed to the door. He went pale. How many? He whispered. 3. Armed, coming here. The footsteps stopped outside the cabin. A voice called out, Orcish language, harsh and commanding. Princess Stoneheart, we know you're here. Come out. King Gareth offers mercy if you surrender now. Kira's jaw clenched. Ethan looked at her, questions in his eyes. Princess. She ignored him, drew her sword from where it leaned against the wall. The blade sang as it cleared the scabbard. The sound of it filled the small space. Stay inside, she commanded. Her voice had changed. Authority, command, the voice of someone used to being obeyed. She stepped outside. 3 orcs stood in the clearing, black leather armor, no insignia. Faces she recognized from the palace guard. Assassins her brother had turned. I'm not going back, she said. The lead assassin smiled. We weren't sent to bring you back. He drew his blade. The other 2 followed. They attacked as one. Professional, coordinated, lethal. Kira met them like a storm. The first assassin came high. She parried, twisted. Her blade opened his throat before he could recover. He fell. The second and third separated, trying to flank her. She spun low, took the second one in the gut, pulled the blade free in a spray of blood. The third hesitated, just for a second. Seeing his companions fall so fast, that hesitation cost him his life. Kira's sword took his head. The entire fight lasted 90 seconds. 3 trained assassins, dead in the dirt. Silence fell, broken only by Kira's breathing. Steady, controlled. She cleaned her blade on the third assassin's cloak, sheathed it, turned back to the cabin. Ethan stood in the doorway, his face white as snow, eyes wide, hands gripping the doorframe like it was the only thing keeping him upright. He'd watched the entire thing, watched her move like death given form, watched her kill 3 men without breaking a sweat. She saw the fear in his eyes. Something in her chest cracked. Ethan, she started. He took a step back. You're... He couldn't finish, couldn't find the words. Yes, her voice came out quiet. I'm a warrior, a trained fighter. I've killed before. She paused. And I'm Princess Kira Stoneheart, 3rd daughter of King Aldrich, 3rd in line to the throne of Iron Peak. The confession hung between them. Ethan stared at her, at the blood on her armor, the easy way she stood among corpses, the command in her voice. Everything made sense now. The bracelet, the way she carried herself, the fact that assassins were hunting her. She'd been royalty the entire time, and he'd been too blind to see it. You lied to me, he said quietly. Yes. For 2 weeks. Yes. Why? Kira's hands clenched. Because I needed you to see me, not the crown, not the politics, not the 3rd princess of a kingdom that's falling apart. Her voice cracked. I needed someone to look and to see Kira, just Kira. She took a step toward him. He didn't move, didn't step back, but didn't step closer either. Everything between us, she continued, every moment, every laugh, every word, it was real, the most real thing in my life. Ethan looked at her for a long moment, at the woman who'd laughed at his terrible pronunciation, who'd burned porridge and swept his floor, who'd fallen asleep on his shoulder, at the warrior who'd just killed 3 men to protect them both. I need time, he said finally, to understand this. Kira nodded. Okay. They stood in the clearing, 3 corpses between them, the truth laid bare, and neither of them knowing what came next. The morning of the 15th day, Kira woke to find Ethan already gone. The cabin felt emptier than usual. She sat up. The wound in her side pulled, but didn't scream. Almost healed now. Orc blood doing its work. The bodies from 3 days ago were buried in the forest, deep, far from the cabin. Ethan had helped despite his fear, despite the questions still churning behind his gray eyes. They hadn't talked much since the fight. Ethan went about his work, chopped wood, checked traps, made meals, but the easy comfort between them was gone, replaced by careful distance. She understood. He'd seen her kill, seen what she was capable of, learned she'd been lying by omission for 2 weeks. Trust once broken took time to rebuild. She found the breakfast he'd left, porridge, an apple, water in the clay cup. She ate slowly. The porridge was better than hers had ever been. She smiled despite everything. When Ethan returned near midday, he found her standing, dressed. The cot neatly made. She'd swept the floor with the old broom. He stopped in the doorway, surprised. "You should be resting," he said. His voice was careful, polite. The warmth from before was missing. "I've rested enough." Her voice came out firm. "Warriors don't lie still unless they're dying. I am not dying." He opened his mouth to argue. She crossed her arms, all 7 feet of her. Green skin returned to its proper color. Amber eyes steady. He closed his mouth. "What can I do?" she asked. "You don't have to." "I know, I want to." Something in her tone made him pause. He looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. "Help me with the wood, if you're strong enough." "I am." They worked together that afternoon. The silence between them was different now. Not comfortable, not easy, but not hostile either. Just careful. Ethan showed her how to stack the logs properly, how to strip bark for kindling, how to split the stubborn pieces that refused the axe. She learned quickly. Her hands, built for sword hilts, adapted to the feel of rough wood. The smell of fresh sawdust filled the air. Pine resin stuck to her fingers. They didn't talk much, just the rhythm of work, the sound of steel biting timber. When the sun started its descent, painting the sky in shades of copper and rust, they returned to the cabin. Kira tried to make dinner. She burned it, not as badly as the first time. But the bottom of the pot still came away black, and the soup tasted like smoke. Ethan tried it anyway, made a face he couldn't quite hide. Kira caught it. She laughed, not the surprise sound from days before. This was bigger, fuller. It rolled out of her like thunder across open sky. Ethan stared at her. For the first time since the fight, something in his expression softened. "Your face," she said, still laughing. "You look like you ate in a boot." "It's not that bad," he lied. "You are terrible at lying, Ethan Rivers." He grinned despite himself. "Yeah, I know." They made new soup together. This time she followed his instructions exactly. Stirred when he said stir, added water when he nodded, tasted the broth and adjusted the salt under his guidance. It came out edible, almost good. "See," Ethan said, "you're learning." I had a good teacher. Something passed between them in that moment, something warm and fragile, like the first green shoot pushing up through late winter snow. The distance wasn't gone, but it had shrunk, just a little. That night, sitting by the fire, Kira pointed to the axe leaning against the wall. "Castor," she said, then paused. "No, that's water." She frowned, searched for the Orcish word. "Drakmar." Ethan tried to repeat it. It came out mangled, wrong. Kira's laugh came easier now, less surprised, more natural. "No, no, Drakmar, your tongue goes here." She tapped her tusks. "I don't have those," Ethan pointed out. "Then you will sound ridiculous forever." He tried again anyway, closer this time. She nodded approval. "What's the human word?" she asked. "Axe," she repeated it perfectly. Of course she did. "Teach me more," she said. So he did. Wood, fire, bread, home. She taught him the Orcish words in return. Strength, honor, clan, blood. "What about kindness?" Ethan asked. Kira paused. "We don't have a word for that." "What do you mean?" "In Orcish culture, we have words for honor, for duty, for the strength to protect your clan. But kindness," she shook her head. "Kindness implies giving without expectation, helping when you gain nothing. That's exactly what kindness is. Orcs don't think that way. Everything is transaction, alliance, debt." Ethan looked at her. "Is that how you see this, a transaction?" "No." The word came out quiet, certain. "That's why I don't have a word for it." She met his eyes across the fire. The flames crackled between them, sending up sparks, filling the cabin with the scent of burning pine. "That's why it scares me," she said. The confession hung in the air. Ethan didn't look away. "It scares me too," he said. Outside, the wind picked up, whistling through the trees, a storm coming in from the mountains. Neither of them moved. The next morning, Kira insisted on helping him chop wood. Real work this time, not just stacking. Ethan hesitated. "You're still healing." "I'm fine." "Kira, I'm fine." That tone again, the one that said arguing was pointless. He handed her the axe. She took it, tested the weight, nodded. "Your stance is wrong," she said, watching him position himself at the chopping block. "I've been doing this for 2 years." Incorrectly. He raised an eyebrow. She stepped behind him, close enough that he could feel her presence, the heat of her body, the scent of stone and rain that seemed to cling to her skin. "Here." Her hands settled on his shoulders, massive and warm. "Your weight is too far forward. You're using arms when you should use your whole body." She adjusted his stance. Her hands moved to his arms, repositioned them. Ethan's heart kicked against his ribs. "Like this," she said. Her breath stirred his hair. "Let the axe do the work. Guide it. Don't force." She stepped back. The cold air rushed in where her warmth had been. "Try now," she said. Ethan swung. The axe bit clean through the log, split it perfectly down the center. He looked at the two halves, then at her. "That was better," she smiled, small but real. "You learn quickly." "Had a good teacher." Her smile widened. They worked together through the morning, her showing him adjusting. Both of them finding a rhythm that felt natural despite coming from completely different worlds. Once their hands touched, reaching for the same log. Ethan jerked back like he'd been burned. Kira noticed. "I'm sorry," she said. "Orcs are more physical. Touch is normal for us. I forget humans are different." "It's okay." "Is it?" He looked at her, at the concern in those amber eyes, the careful distance she was trying to maintain now. "Yeah," he said quietly. "It's okay. I'm not used to it." "Should I stop?" "No, Shung." The word came out faster than he intended. Her expression shifted. Something that might have been hope flickered across her face. "Okay," she said. "Okay." They went back to work, but the air between them had changed again, charged with something neither of them knew how to name. That evening, Ethan returned from checking his snare traps to find Kira reading one of his books, A History of the Eastern Kingdoms. She looked up when he entered. "This book says orcs invaded human lands 300 years ago," she said. "That's what human historians wrote, yeah. That's not what happened." Ethan set down his satchel. 2 rabbits hung from his belt. Dinner. The smell of blood and fur filled the small space. "What did happen?" he asked. Kira's jaw set. "Humans expanded into the Iron Peak valleys, lands our people had held for 1,000 years. They brought soldiers, built forts, drove out the clans." She looked down at the book. "We defended our territory. Your people called it invasion." Ethan began skinning the first rabbit. The blade made small, wet sounds against flesh. "Maybe both are true," he said. She looked up sharply. "How can both be true?" "Depends on where you're standing. To humans expanding west, they were settling new territory. To orcs already there, they were invaders." He paused. "Maybe everybody was right. Maybe everybody was wrong." Kira stared at him. In Iron Peak, disagreements ended in arguments. Posturing, someone claiming absolute truth while others bent or broke. This human just acknowledged both sides. "You don't judge," she said slowly. "Who am I to judge? I wasn't there. Don't know what it was like." He continued working on the rabbit. "All I know is what's in front of me now." "And what's that?" He looked at her. "Someone who needed help. Someone who's teaching me words in her language and laughing at my terrible accent. Someone who makes this cabin feel less empty." Kira's breath caught. "I've never had that before," she said quietly. "Had what?" "Someone who sees me. Just me." Her hands tightened on the book. "People see what they want. Strength, fear, usefulness, the princess, the warrior, the political alliance." She looked at him. "You see, Kira?" Ethan's hands stilled on the rabbit. Blood dripped from his fingers. "Yeah," he said, "I do." Something broke in her expression. She stood up quickly, turned away, but not before he saw the tears. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice rough. I'm not, it's okay." "No, it's weak. Princesses don't. You're not there right now." Ethan set down his knife, wiped his hands on a cloth, stood. "You're here. And here you can be whoever you need to be." She stood with her back to him. Her shoulders shook once. Ethan took a careful step closer. "Can I?" She nodded. He reached out slowly, gave her time to pull away. She didn't. His hand settled on her shoulder blade, small against her broad back. She turned, looked down at him with those amber eyes swimming with tears she refused to let fall. He reached up with his thumb, gentle, wiped away the single tear that escaped. His hand looked tiny against her green cheek. "You're allowed to feel things," he said quietly. "Even princesses." She laughed. It came out wet and broken. "How did you know what? That I was—" She trailed off. Ethan's hand dropped. He stepped back, looked at her properly. "I didn't know for sure, but after the fight—" He gestured vaguely. "The way you moved, the way you commanded, and that bracelet." He pointed to the gold circlet on her wrist. "That's not common jewelry. That's royal." She touched the bracelet, her mother's, the only thing she'd taken when she fled. "Are you afraid now?" she asked. "No." "Why not? Because you're still Kira, still the person who laughs when I mispronounce words, still the person who burned porridge and swept my floor without being asked." He paused. "Whatever title you have doesn't change that." She looked at him for a long moment, then she closed the distance between them, wrapped her arms around him. Careful, like she was afraid of breaking something fragile. Ethan hesitated for just a heartbeat, then hugged her back. His arms didn't reach all the way around her, but they tried. They stood like that while the afternoon light shifted across the cabin floor, the smell of herbs and blood and the coming storm mixing together. Two people from different worlds, finding something in each other they hadn't known they needed. The beating happened on the 18th day. Ethan went to Timber Falls to trade his cut wood for supplies. Kira wanted to come, but he convinced her to stay. Too risky. People asked questions. He should have been back by noon. The sun was setting when he finally pushed through the cabin door. Kira looked up from the soup she was making. Not burning, actually making properly. Then she saw him. Blood on his shirt, lips split and swelling, his left eye already purpling. He walked stiff, favoring his right side. The smell of blood, fresh and sharp, filled the cabin. She was across the room in 2 strides. "Who did this?" "It's nothing." "Who?" Her voice came out like a growl. Ethan flinched, not from fear, from pain. She gentled immediately, hands hovering, wanting to help, afraid of hurting him worse. "Some men from town," he said finally. "The mill owner's sons. They saw me buying extra food, asked questions." "What did you tell them?" "That it was for me." "They didn't believe you." "No." Kira's hands clenched into fists. "I'll kill them." "Kira, I'll march into that town right now and break every bone in there." "No." The word came out sharp, final. Ethan caught her wrist. His hand couldn't circle it, but the touch stopped her. "It'll make things worse," he said. "They hurt you because of me. That's my responsibility. I made the choice to help you. I don't regret it." "Why?" The word burst out of her, desperate, angry. "Why endure this for me? You gain nothing. You lose everything. Your safety, your peace. They beat you, and you just accept it." Ethan was quiet for a moment. His hand dropped from her wrist. He moved to the table, sat down carefully, his ribs screaming. "I need to tell you something," he said. "About the fire, about what really happened." Kira sat across from him, waited. The fire in the hearth popped. Ethan's hands jerked. "My father worked at the sawmill," Ethan began, his voice steady but distant, like he was reading from a script he'd memorized long ago. "Good man, quiet. We didn't talk much after my mother died, but we had an understanding." He looked at his hands, at the scar running up his right forearm, shiny and puckered, old burn tissue. "The fire started on a Tuesday evening. I was in the workshop, heard the bells, ran to help. The fire popped again, louder this time. Ethan's whole body trembled. My father was inside. Someone said he went back for the owner's ledgers, account books, numbers on paper. His hands started to shake. He shouted at me through the smoke, 'Get the ledgers, son. Save the ledgers.'" Ethan's voice cracked. I stood there, 3 seconds, maybe less, thinking he matters more than paper. Just 3 seconds of hesitation while I decided to save him instead of the books. The fire crackled. His hand shook harder. 3 seconds, and a support beam fell, pinned him. I tried to pull him out, burned my arm. He touched the scar. Someone dragged me away. I screamed, fought, couldn't save him. He looked up at Kira, his eyes wet, reflecting the firelight. 3 seconds of doing the right thing. And my father died anyway. The owner blamed me, said I was careless with the lamps, said if I'd gotten the ledgers like I was told, the fire would have been contained. The whole town believed him. Sarah left. Everyone left. He took a shaking breath. The smell of his own fear, sharp and bitter, filled his nose. I won't hesitate anymore. Not when someone needs help. Not when I can do something. His voice went quiet. Not when those 3 seconds might matter. Kira's vision blurred. She reached across the table. Her large hand covered both of his. Warm, solid. You couldn't have saved him, she said. I know. It wasn't your fault. I know that too. He looked at their joined hands. But knowing and feeling are different things. Yes, she whispered. They are. They sat like that as darkness gathered outside, the wind picking up, the first drops of rain tapping against the roof. Two wounded people, holding each other's broken pieces. The fire burned low. Eventually Kira stood, moved around the table, knelt beside his chair so they were eye level. Thank you, she said. For what? For not hesitating. For me. She leaned forward, pressed her forehead against his, an orcish gesture. Deep respect. Trust. The scent of her stone and rain surrounded him. Ethan closed his eyes, let the contact ground him. Who are you really? He whispered. Tell me everything. Kira pulled back slightly, met his eyes. My father was King Aldrich Stoneheart, ruler of Iron Peak for 40 years. He died 2 months ago. Heart gave out. Her voice steadied. My eldest brother Gareth should have shared power with the council. Instead, he seized the throne, consolidated control. She swallowed. I'm third in line, not a real threat, but Gareth is thorough. He sent assassins. When I killed them, he announced my betrothal to Victor Blacktusk, a warlord 3 times my age who collects wives. Her jaw clenched. I refused. I fled, took nothing but my sword and my mother's bracelet, planned to reach my mother's cousin at the border clan. Regroup. Challenge Gareth when I was stronger. The arrow wound, Ethan said. His hunters caught me at the border. I fought. Won, but barely. She touched her side. Been running ever since. 3 weeks in human lands, hiding, starving, until I found that tree. She looked at him. Until I found you. Ethan was quiet for a moment, processing. More assassins will come, he said. Yes. You can't hide here forever. No. What happens when they find you? Kira's expression hardened. I fight, I win, or I die. Ethan shook his head. That's not a plan. That's suicide. It's all I have. No, he stood, winced as his ribs protested. No, we figure this out together. She looked up at him. We. Something in her chest cracked open. Why? Her voice barely a whisper. Why would you do that? Ethan reached down, offered his hand. She took it. He pulled her to her feet. Because some things are worth the risk, he said. Outside, the storm broke. Rain hammered the roof. Thunder rolled across the mountains. Inside, 2 people stood close, not quite touching. But not apart either. Something shifting between them. Something dangerous and beautiful and impossible. Something that felt like the beginning of everything. The horses came at dawn. Ethan woke to the sound of hooves on frozen ground. Multiple riders, moving with purpose through the forest. War-trained mounts didn't sound like farm horses. They moved differently, heavier, more disciplined. The rhythm of their steps deliberate. He sat up fast, too fast. His ribs screamed. The beating from yesterday had settled into his bones overnight. Everything hurt. The smell of his own sweat, stale and sick, made him nauseous. Kira was already at the window, sword in hand. He hadn't even seen her draw it. How many, he asked. 4 riders, heavy armor, Iron Peak colors. Her voice was different, harder, the voice of someone used to command. Who are they? She didn't answer, just moved to the door, opened it, stepped out into the gray morning light. Ethan followed despite his protesting body. The riders emerged from the tree line, 4 orcs on massive war horses. Plate armor that caught the weak sunlight and threw it back in sharp gleams. Weapons that looked like they'd seen real use. Banners bearing a sigil Ethan didn't recognize. A mountain peak crossed with hammers. The lead rider dismounted, old. maybe 50. Scars mapped across his face like geography. One eye milky with age, the other sharp as broken glass. He took 3 steps toward Kira, then dropped to one knee. His forehead touched the ground. "Princess Kira Stoneheart," he said, his voice like gravel in a bucket. "We've been searching for 6 weeks." The world tilted. Ethan heard the words, understood them individually, but together they made no sense, Princess. He'd known. Since the fight with the assassins, since she'd told him pieces of her story, but hearing it spoken aloud, seeing the formal respect, the genuine fear and reverence in this old warrior's voice, it made it real. Kira looked back at him, her amber eyes wide, frightened, not of the soldiers, of him, of what he was about to learn. "Ethan," she started, but the old warrior was still talking. "Half the kingdom thinks you dead, your highness. King Gareth has consolidated power, announced your betrothal to Victor Blacktusk in absentia. The clans are fracturing. Civil war is coming. We need you home." King, betrothal, civil war. The words kept coming like punches. Ethan took a step back. The old warrior continued, "I'm Captain Marcus Ironhand. Served your father for 30 years. Taught you the sword when you were 6. His voice cracked slightly. "Please, your highness, come home. Lead us. Be our queen." Queen. Ethan's legs went weak. Kira stepped toward him. "Let me explain." "Explain what?" His voice came out flat, dead. "That you're not just a princess, you're heir to a throne, that you're going to be a queen. Third in line, it's not, it's everything." He looked at her, really looked. "You're going back to a kingdom, a war, a crown, and I'm a woodcutter." The distance between them felt infinite. Marcus cleared his throat. "Your Highness, we must move. More of Gareth's assassins are hunting you. This location is compromised. We tracked the last squad here. Others will follow." "Give me 1 hour," Kira said without looking at him. "Princess." "1 hour, Marcus. I'm still your commanding officer." The old warrior's jaw worked. Then he nodded. 1 hour. We'll secure the perimeter." He remounted. The 4 riders spread out into the forest, creating a defensive ring around the cabin, the sound of armor and weapons fading into the trees. Kira turned back to Ethan. They stood 10 feet apart, the morning mist swirling between them. "Come inside," she said. "Please, let me explain everything." Ethan didn't move. "What's there to explain your royalty? I'm nobody. You were hiding here until your people found you. Now you'll go back to your castle and your throne and my what?" Her voice sharp. "My loneliness. My court full of people who see me as a chess piece. My brother who wants me dead or married off to a brute 3 times my age." She closed the distance between them, the scent of her stone and rain, and something wild washed over him. "You think being a princess is beautiful? It's a bourgeoisie. Everyone wants something. Alliance, power, my name, my bloodline, my death." She stopped an arm's length away. "You were the first person in my entire life who gave without wanting something back, who saw me as a person instead of a title, who made me feel like I mattered for who I am instead of what I am." Tears ran down her green cheeks. "So yes, I hid the truth, because for 3 weeks I got to be free." Her voice broke. "And I was terrified that if you knew everything, it would all change." Ethan stared at her, at the tears, the trembling, the raw honesty. "It has changed," he said quietly. She flinched like he'd struck her. "I know. I thought I was helping someone in need. I didn't know I was helping royalty. That changes things. Why I'm still the same person who, are you, the question came out harsh. Because the woman I knew didn't have armies hunting her, didn't have kingdoms waiting for her, didn't have a crown in her future. None of that matters. It's all that matters." His voice rose. Pain flared in his ribs, but he didn't care. "You're going back to a war, to politics and power and people who will kill for that throne. And you want me to what? Come with you, watch you become queen, while I'm what? The human who helped you once." Kira's hands clenched. "I can't stay," she said finally. "My people need me. Civil war is coming. Thousands will die if I don't challenge Gareth for the throne. I know. I have to go back. I know that too." She looked at him. "What happens to us?" Ethan's throat closed. He turned away, looked at the cabin, his home. The place he'd built with grief and isolation and quiet determination to survive alone. The place that had felt less like a prison these past 3 weeks. I don't know, he said. Behind them from deep in the forest came a sound. A whistle. Sharp. Urgent. Marcus's voice carried through the trees. Contact northeast, multiple hostiles. Kira spun, drew her sword in one fluid motion. The blade sang, the sound of it cutting through the morning air. Stay inside, she commanded. Then she was running. Ethan stood frozen for 3 seconds. 3 seconds of calculation, of weighing risk, of that familiar paralysis that had cost him his father. Not again. He grabbed his wood axe from beside the door, ran after her. The battle was already raging when he reached the clearing. 6 orcs in black leather, no insignia, silent and deadly, moving like shadows given form. Assassins. Marcus and his guards fought desperately. Steel rang against steel. Blood already stained the frozen ground. The smell of it, copper and salt, hung thick in the air. One assassin broke through the line, headed straight for Kira. She met him head on. Their blades clashed. Once. Twice. She was faster. Her sword took him in the throat. He fell gurgling. 2 more came at her from different angles. Coordinated. Professional. She spun, parried the first. Couldn't reach the second in time. His blade arced toward her unprotected side. Ethan didn't think, just moved. The wood axe came up, blocked the strike. The impact jarred his entire body, sent lightning up his already injured ribs. He tasted blood. The assassin's eyes widened in surprise, then narrowed in contempt. A human, with a woodcutter's axe. This would take seconds. He swung again. Ethan tried to parry, too slow. The blade caught him across the forearm, opened a line of fire next to his old burn scar. Blood spilled hot down his arm. He stumbled back. The assassin advanced, raised his sword for the killing blow. Kira's blade took his head off before it fell. The body dropped. She whirled, cut down another assassin, then another. Marcus and his guards finished the rest. Silence fell, broken only by harsh breathing and the drip of blood on dead leaves. Kira dropped to her knees beside Ethan. What were you thinking? Her hands on his face, his shoulders, checking for wounds, the scent of blood, his and others everywhere. You could have been killed. I was thinking I couldn't let you die. You have no armor, no training. He would have. I know. Ethan's voice came out steady despite the adrenaline shaking through him, despite the pain screaming up his arm. But I wasn't going to stand there and watch. Not again. Not you. Something broke in her expression. She pulled him against her, held him so tight his ribs protested. He held her back. You magnificent fool, she whispered. Yeah, he said, I know. She pulled back enough to look at him, her hands cupped his face. Blood on both of them. His, hers, the assassin's, human and orc. So different, fitting perfectly. I love you, she said. The words simple, direct, orc-style honesty. No poetry, no flowery declarations, just truth. Ethan's breath stopped. These 3 weeks have been the happiest of my life, she continued. You saw me when everyone else saw the crown. You gave your last bread to a stranger. You made me laugh. You made me hope. She took a shaking breath. I'm going back to Iron Peak, to challenge Gareth, to prevent the war, to claim the throne that's rightfully mine. Her thumbs brushed his cheekbones, gentle despite the calluses. Come with me. The world stopped. What? Come with me, as my consort, my partner, my equal. Kira, I'm a woodcutter. You're a princess, a queen. I know what I'm asking. Her voice fierce. Leave your world. Enter mine. Face judgment from my people. Court politics. Enemies who will use you against me. Constant danger. Then why? Because I don't want to rule without you. The words came out raw, desperate. I can't sit on a throne surrounded by people who want things from me, while the one person who wanted nothing is here, alone, cutting wood in a forest, carrying guilt that isn't his. She leaned her forehead against his, the blood on both their faces mixing. I'm offering everything I have, my hand, my heart, half my kingdom, a place at my side. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Choose me. Choose this impossible thing. Ethan's mind raced. Leave everything. His cabin, his isolation, the safe small life he'd built from ashes. Enter a world of politics and power and people who would hate him for being human. Risk everything for her. I'm terrified, he said, so am I. I'll fail you. I'm not strong enough, smart enough. You're the man who gave his last bread to a starving stranger, who tended my wounds, who made me feel seen. She pulled back to look him in the eyes. You're the bravest person I know. I don't know how to be a consort to a queen. Then we'll figure it out together. Ethan looked at her, at the hope and fear warring in those amber eyes, at the woman who'd laughed at his terrible orcish pronunciation and cried when he said he saw her, at the warrior who'd just killed 3 men to protect them both. 3 seconds, a voice whispered in his head. You hesitated 3 seconds, and your father died. Don't hesitate now. Yes, he said. Kira went still. Yes. Yes, I'll come. Yes, I'll stand with you. Yes to all of it. He took her hands, his small and scarred, hers large and calloused, perfect together. Because I love you too, he said. Because you made me feel like I mattered. Because some things are worth the risk. He squeezed her hands, the blood making them sticky. Because I won't hesitate. Not anymore. Not for you. Kira's face crumpled. She kissed him, hard and desperate and tasting of salt and copper and hope. He kissed her back. The world fell away. There was only this, only them, only the impossible choice that somehow felt like the only choice that mattered. Marcus cleared his throat. They broke apart. We need to move, the old warrior said, his scarred face carefully neutral. More assassins will come. The bodies will draw attention. Kira stood, helped Ethan to his feet. His arm throbbed. His ribs screamed, but he stood steady. Do you have anything you need to take? She asked. Ethan looked at the cabin, at his few possessions, his books, his tools. Everything he owned could fit in a single pack, but none of it mattered. No, he said, I have everything I need. Marcus produced bandages from his saddlebag, wrapped Ethan's arm with efficient movements. Can you ride? The old warrior asked. I'll manage. They left as the sun cleared the treetops, 5 riders heading north into the mountains. Ethan on a horse for the first time in years, every movement jarring his injured ribs, the smell of horse and leather and blood mixing together. Kira rode beside him, Marcus and his guards forming a protective ring. He didn't look back. The journey took 5 days, each one harder than the last. The mountain trails were steep, rocky. The horses picked their way carefully over loose stones and through narrow passes. The air grew thinner, colder, the smell of pine giving way to the clean, sharp scent of high altitude. Ethan's ribs made every breath painful. His arm throbbed constantly beneath the bandages. But he didn't complain. Kira used the time to prepare him, taught him about Iron Peak politics, the clan structure, the court factions, who would support her claim, who would oppose. The military clans will likely back me, she explained as they rode. I've led war bands, proven myself in battle. General Kraug remembers me, respects me. And the others? The trade clans will wait to see who wins. They care about stability, not bloodline. The noble houses, she paused. They'll be split. Some supported my father. Others have made deals with Gareth. And the common people. They loved my father. Hated Gareth's heavy hand. But I've been gone 3 months, dead in their eyes. That changes things. Marcus told stories as they rode. Stubbornest child I ever trained, the old warrior said, a hint of pride in his gravelly voice. Beat boys twice her size by the time she was 10. Made them cry. Made me laugh. He paused. First time she cried was when her father refused to let her lead a war band at 15. Said she was too young. She didn't speak to him for a month. Ethan learned who she'd been before loneliness shaped her. Started to understand the cage she'd lived in. On the 3rd day, Ethan went quiet, the weight of what he'd agreed to settling on his shoulders like stones. Kira noticed. What's wrong? I don't belong in your world. You belong with me. That's all that matters. What if I'm a liability? What if I drag you down? What if they hate me so much it costs you the throne? She turned in her saddle to face him fully, the afternoon sun behind her, her face in shadow. Then we'll face it together, but you won't. I know your strength, even if you don't. How can you be so sure, Bada? Because you didn't hesitate when that assassin came for me. Because you're riding into a kingdom that will judge you and you're doing it anyway. Because you're brave enough to be terrified and still choose love. She reached over, took his hand. That's the kind of strength kingdoms are built on. On the fifth day, they crested a ridge. Iron Peak stronghold spread below them. Ethan's breath stopped. It was carved into the mountain itself. Stone and iron merged with living rock. Waterfalls cascading down fortress walls hundreds of feet high. Gates that could hold back armies. Defensive positions built over generations. The smell of forge fires and stone dust carried on the wind. Home to 60,000 orcs. The seat of power for an entire kingdom. That's where you're from, his voice barely a whisper. That's where we're going. She took his hand. He squeezed back, terrified but committed. The gates opened as they approached. Word had spread, the lost princess returning. Crowds lined the streets, orcs of all ages, warriors in armor, merchants in fine clothes, craftsmen in leather aprons, families with children. They began to chant, Princess Kira, Princess Kira. The sound rolled like thunder through stone corridors, echoing off walls, building in volume. Ethan felt the weight of thousands of eyes, most on Kira, some on him, the human, the outsider. He heard the whispers. Who's that? A human. Why would she bring a human? They reached the palace, massive, ancient, more stone and iron than Ethan had imagined possible. The smell of old fires and older stone. History pressed into every surface. Hundreds of orcs packed inside the great hall. Nobles in elaborate armor. Warriors bearing clan sigils. Court officials in formal robes. And on the throne sat Gareth Stoneheart, 7.5 feet of muscle and ambition. Their father's nose. Their mother's cold eyes. Scars across his knuckles. The crown sitting awkward on his head like it didn't quite fit. He stood as Kira entered. Where have you been, Dee? His voice boomed, filling the hall. 6 weeks I've held this kingdom together while you sent assassins to kill me. Kira's voice cut through his bluster like a blade. While you announced a betrothal I never agreed to. While you seized a throne that wasn't yours to take. Lies. Marcus stepped forward. I found her in human lands, wounded, hunted. We were attacked twice by assassins bearing Iron Peak blades. Your blade masters, your majesty. The title came out like an insult. Murmurs rippled through the court. Gareth's jaw clenched, his story crumbling. Then his eyes found Ethan. Looked him up and down. The sneer that crossed his face made his contempt clear. What is the human doing here? The words dripped with disdain. Kira's hand went to her sword. Watch your words, brother. Ethan stepped forward, his heart hammering. Every eye in the room turning to him. The smell of his own fear sharp in his nostrils. But his voice came out steady. My name is Ethan Rivers. I gave aid to Princess Kira when she was injured. I'm here at her invitation. Laughter from some corners. Mockery. A human in the palace absurd. Is this your new pet sister? Kira's voice rang out. Clear, certain, filling every corner of the vast hall. I invoke my right by blood and tradition. I challenge Gareth Stoneheart for the throne. Silence. Then case. Objections, arguments, court factions shouting over each other, the sound deafening. Kira waited for the noise to die. Then she spoke again, each word deliberate. And when I win, Ethan Rivers will be my consort. The explosion of sound was deafening. Consort. A human. Impossible. Disgraceful. The bloodline. An ancient orc woman stood, 90 if she was a day, blind, white hair like spider silk, but her voice cut through the chaos like a blade through flesh. I am Grandmother Thorn, keeper of the old laws. She turned toward Ethan, though she couldn't see him. The law is clear. Consorts must prove their worth, must demonstrate they can stand beside royalty, must earn their place. She paused. Let the silence build. 3 trials: strength, wisdom, heart. Her blind eyes seemed to stare directly at Ethan. If the human passes, his place is earned. If he fails, he returns to human lands. Alone. Kira started to object. Ethan touched her arm. I'll do it. You don't have to. Yes, I do. For us. She looked at him, saw the certainty in his gray eyes, the fear beneath it. but the certainty stronger. She nodded. The trials will be held in 3 days, Grandmother Thorne declared. Time for the human to prepare, time for witnesses to gather, time for the kingdom to watch. The hall erupted again. Arguments, objections, but the law had been invoked. The trials would happen. Kira led Ethan from the hall, through stone corridors, past guards who stared, into a suite of rooms high in the palace. When the door closed behind them, she finally let herself shake. I'm sorry, she said. I didn't think about the trials. I should have. It's okay. It's not. They're designed for warriors. You're not. I'll manage. She looked at him, at this human who'd agreed to stand trial before an entire kingdom, who'd followed her into a world that would judge him for his species, who loved her enough to risk everything. I'll help you prepare, she said. 3 days, we'll train. I'll teach you what I can. Okay? She held him that night. Neither slept much. Too much fear, too much at stake. The trials were set, and Ethan Rivers would face them, a woodcutter against a kingdom, love against tradition, hope against impossible odds. The morning of the first trial arrived cold and clear, the arena carved into the mountainside. Stone amphitheater, seats for 10,000, every seat filled. This wasn't just a trial, it was a spectacle. Ethan stood at the base, looking up at the mountain shrine, 300 steps carved into living rock. Each step a foot high, at his feet lay a stone, 200 pounds of carved granite. He had 1 hour to carry it to the top. The crowd murmured, bets being placed, most giving him 10 minutes before he quit. Kira sat in the royal box, hands clenched white on the railing, forbidden from helping, forbidden from interfering. Grandmother Thorne's voice rang out, let the trial of strength begin. Ethan bent, gripped the stone, lifted. His ribs screamed. The injury from the fight not fully healed. The stone was impossibly heavy. He took the first step, then the second. The first 50 steps were manageable, adrenaline helping, fear driving him forward. By step 75, his legs burned. His breath came ragged. Sweat poured down his face despite the cold. The crowd watched in silence. At step 107, he fell. His legs gave out. The stone rolled down 10 steps, crashed against rock with a sound like thunder. The crowd jeered. Send him home. Weak human, she should pick an orc. Kira stood, hands gripping the rail so hard the wood cracked. Ethan lay on the steps, everything screaming. His vision blurred, the taste of copper in his mouth, 3 seconds. He'd failed his father in 3 seconds. Not again. He pushed himself up, climbed back down, retrieved the stone, started again. At step 203, he fell harder, crashed forward. The stone pinned him briefly, blood from scraped hands staining the rock. Marcus watched from the guard position, muttered low enough only his men could hear. Get up, boy. Show them what humans are made of. Ethan pushed the stone off, stood, his whole body trembling, blood and sweat mixing, but he climbed. The final 100 steps were pure will. No strength left, no adrenaline, just the choice to keep moving. 1 step, then another. The crowd had gone silent, watching this human refuse to quit. Step 295, 296, 297, each one an eternity. Step 300. He reached the shrine, collapsed, but he'd made it. 3 minutes to spare. The crowd exploded, not all cheering, but the silence broken. The human has proven endurance, Grandmother Thorne declared, her voice carrying across the arena. Trial 1 passed. Kira was there in seconds, held him while he gasped for air. You magnificent fool, she whispered. He grinned through blood and exhaustion. 1 down. The second trial came the next day. Less physical, more cerebral. The War Council chamber, maps spread across a massive table, dozens of veteran warriors watching, judging. Grandmother Thorne presented the scenario. Iron Peak is besieged. 3 enemy clans, 50,000 warriors. Our food stores depleted. Reinforcements 2 weeks away. How do you defend the stronghold? Ethan stood at the table. Every eye on him. He had no military training, didn't know orc warfare tactics, was surrounded by warriors who'd spent lifetimes studying combat. But he knew mountains, knew terrain, knew how wood and stone could be weapons. He studied the map, asked questions. What's the terrain like at these approach points? Rocky, unstable. Water sources, 3 springs, 2 inside the walls, 1 outside. Enemy supply lines. Stretched thin, 2-week journey from their nearest stronghold. Ethan traced routes on the map. Use the terrain. The mountains are your ally. Controlled avalanches here and here, he pointed. Block 2 of the 3 approach routes. Force them into this valley. That valley is our weakest point, General Craig objected, which is why they won't expect you to defend it. Set up guerrilla positions in the rocks. Hit their supply lines. Make them fight the mountain, not just your warriors. He continued, fortify the water sources. They'll need water more than you do. Deny them access. Trade space for time. Make every foot of ground cost them blood. Retreat, you counsel retreat. Another general, scarred and angry. I counsel survival. You can't win a direct fight outnumbered 5-1, but you can make them bleed, make them question if Iron Peak is worth the cost, make them fight winter and hunger and terrain. He met their eyes. Hold for 2 weeks. When reinforcements arrive, you counterattack. Catch them between your forces, exhausted, starving, demoralized. Silence. The War Council exchanged looks. Marcus spoke first. Unconventional but sound, using terrain as weapon, making the enemy's strength a weakness. General Craig nodded slowly. The boy thinks like a survivor, not like a warrior, but in siege conditions. He paused. It would work. Grandmother Thorne's voice rang out. The human demonstrates wisdom born of different perspective. This is not weakness. This is strength. She paused. Trial 2 passed. The council chamber erupted in murmurs. 2 trials down, 1 to go. The 3rd trial came on the final day. No physical test, no strategic puzzle, just a question. But the hardest question of all. The throne room packed, thousands watching, the entire kingdom bearing witness. Grandmother Thorne stood before Ethan. The trial of heart, she said. A question with no right answer. Only true answer. She paused. Let the tension build. Kira is queen. War threatens the kingdom. She must lead the army herself. High probability of death. As her consort, do you support her going, or do you try to keep her safe? The trap was obvious. Say yes, and he didn't love her enough to protect her. Say no, and he didn't respect her as warrior and ruler. Wrong answer either way. Ethan looked at Kira. She sat in the throne, crown not yet hers but waiting. Her amber eyes locked on his. Trust me, those eyes said. He looked back at Grandmother Thorne, took a breath. I would support whatever decision Queen Kira made. The crowd murmured. He continued, because she's capable of choosing for herself. She's a trained warrior, a brilliant strategist. She knows the cost of war better than I ever will. His voice grew stronger. Because her duty to her people might demand sacrifice. And loving her means respecting that duty, not trying to cage her for my comfort. He paused. But I would also insist on going with her. Murmurs grew louder. Not to fight her battles, I'm no warrior, but to tend wounds, to manage supplies, to remind her what she's fighting for when the battle gets dark. He looked at Kira. Because partnership means sharing burdens, not removing them. Because if she falls, I fall beside her. That's what consort means. He turned back to Grandmother Thorne. I won't try to protect her from herself. Won't try to make her choices for her. But I'll stand with her through every choice she makes. He took a breath. That's love. Not possession, not control. Just standing together through whatever comes. Silence filled the hall. Complete. Total. Then Grandmother Thorne smiled. The first genuine smile anyone had seen from her in years. The human understands the weight of the crown, she said, and the price of love, and the difference between protection and partnership. She turned to the crowd. Trial 3 passed. The hall erupted, some cheering, some objecting, but the trials were done. Ethan had proven himself. Then Victor Blacktusk stepped forward from the crowd. The warlord Gareth had tried to force Kira to marry. 55 years old, covered in scars like trophies. Legendary fighter. The smell of old blood and violence clinging to him like a cloak. I invoke ancient challenge, right, he growled. The hall went silent. I won't accept a human consort unless he can defend his claim. Victor's voice carried to every corner. Single combat. To yield or death. Now. Kira shot to her feet. No. Ethan has proven himself. This is legal, Grandmother Thorne said quietly. Ancient law. Anyone can challenge consort to combat. To prove they're worthy to stand beside royalty. The elders conferred, ruled the challenge valid. Kira gripped the throne. This is murder. Victor is a legendary warrior. Ethan has no chance. Victor smiled, cold, cruel. Then perhaps he shouldn't have agreed to marry above his station. Ethan stepped forward. I accept. Ethan, no. I accept the challenge. Kira was at his side in seconds, gripped his shoulders. Don't do this. I'll find another way. There is no other way. He touched her face. You know that. He'll kill you. Maybe, but I have to try. Why? Because I won't hesitate. Not anymore, not for you. She held him, right there in front of the entire court. I can't lose you, she whispered. You won't. How can you be sure? Because some things are worth fighting for. The combat was set for dawn. That night, Kira held Ethan in her chambers. Neither slept. She told him stories of her childhood. He told her about his father. They memorized each other's faces, just in case. Dawn came too soon. The arena filled. 10,000 orcs crowding the stands. This would be spectacle or execution. Victor entered in full battle armor, dual war axes, each weighing 40 pounds, scars across his chest like a map of violence. The smell of weapon oil and old leather. Ethan entered in borrowed leather armor that didn't fit, a single sword he barely knew how to use. The morning sun cold on his skin. The fight was brutal from the first moment. Victor tested him with light strikes. Ethan parried clumsily. The third strike disarmed him, sword flying 20 feet away. The crowd roared. Pick it up, Victor said. I want this to be sporting. Ethan retrieved his sword. Victor struck again. Blow number 2 knocked him down. Hard. He got up. The pattern continued. Blow 3, down, up. Blow 4, down harder, up. Blood ran from his nose. His lips split. A gash opened on his forehead. The taste of copper flooding his mouth. He kept getting up. Kira watched from her seat, tears streaming down her face, hands gripping the rail, forbidden from interfering. Every time he fell, she flinched. Every time he rose, she held her breath. On the 7th knockdown, Ethan struggled to his knees, swayed, blood pooling beneath him. The smell of it sharp and hot. He looked up at Victor through swollen eyes. Is that all you got? Something shifted in Victor's expression. He lowered his axes, stared at this broken human who refused to stay down. Why Lisawa? He asked, not shouting, genuinely curious. Why keep standing? You can't win. Everyone knows it. Even you know it. Because I promised her I wouldn't give up. Ethan's voice came through broken teeth, blood on his lips. And I keep my promises. Victor looked at Kira, at the tears on her face, at the way she was half out of her seat, torn between protocol and love. He looked back at Ethan, at this human on his knees, beaten, bloodied, unbroken. You fight not for glory, Victor said slowly. Not for honor, not for the throne. He paused. You fight for her. Ethan nodded. Yeah. Victor turned to the crowd. His voice rang out across the arena. I have killed hundreds. Warriors who begged for mercy. Warriors who offered gold. Warriors who pleaded for their lives. He pointed at Ethan. This human has not begged, has not bargained, has not yielded. He lowered his axes. He fights for love, pure and simple. No glory, no gain, just her. He looked at Kira. That is a consort worthy of a queen. He turned and walked away, left Ethan kneeling in bloody sand. The crowd erupted. Victor had never shown mercy. Never. This was unprecedented. Kira ran to Ethan, caught him as he collapsed. Healers rushed forward. The challenge was satisfied. The opposition had no more moves. Ethan had passed every test, survived every challenge. The court would have to accept him. 1 week later, time for wounds to heal, for the kingdom to prepare. Kira faced Gareth in trial by combat for the throne. Traditional single combat, to yield or death. The fight lasted 20 minutes. Brutal, vicious, brother and sister with everything to lose. Gareth was bigger, stronger, fought with rage and desperation. But Kira was faster, smarter, and she was fighting for something real. Not power, love. Her sword found his throat, drew a thin line of blood. Yield. Gareth looked into her eyes, saw she'd kill him if she had to, but would rather not. I yield. She lowered her blade. You have 1 day to leave. Exile. But alive. Gareth nodded, rose, walked from the arena, the crown passed to Kira. The coronation was immediate. Ancient ceremony, 500 years of tradition. The smell of incense and old stone. The crown of iron and stone placed on her head. Queen Kira Stoneheart, first of her name. The crowd roared. Then she called Ethan forward. He walked out in formal attire that still didn't quite fit, his injuries mostly healed, the scars adding to the ones he already carried. He knelt before her. She raised him up, placed the consort's circlet on his head. Gold and simple, kissed him in front of 60,000 orcs. Some cheered, some frowned, all witnessed. The statement was clear. She'd chosen. They would accept it or leave. Most chose to stay. Spring in Iron Peak, flowers blooming in the mountain gardens, the smell of apple blossoms and fresh rain. Ethan had found his place, human relations advisor, negotiating trade agreements with human territories, improving relations that had been hostile for generations. He'd also become Kira's conscience. When she was too harsh, he softened her. When she doubted, he reminded her of her strength. The court had learned to respect him, not for his strength, not for his wisdom, but for his steadiness, his honesty, the way he saw people as people. One evening they sat in the nursery. Their daughter slept in the cradle. Arya, 2 months old, green skin, gray eyes, small tusks just beginning to show, black hair soft as silk. The first half-human, half-orc royal child in history. Perfect. Sometimes I think about that day, Ethan said quietly. The bread, how close I came to walking past. Kira leaned against him, the scent of her familiar now. Home. I think about it too. Do you regret it, this path? Everything we've faced. She turned to look at him. Really look. These 3 years have been hard. Politics, opposition, people who still think you don't belong. She smiled. But they've been real. More honest than anything before. She gestured around. I have a kingdom, a purpose, a daughter, and you. She took his hand. No, I don't regret it. Neither do I. They sat in comfortable silence. Two people from different worlds, who'd built a bridge one act of kindness at a time. Outside the window, Iron Peak spread below. A kingdom changing, growing, learning to see beyond old hatreds. Inside, a queen and a woodcutter held hands, watched their daughter dream. It wasn't the ending anyone would have predicted that day in the forest, but it was theirs, and it was enough. A messenger arrived after midnight. Urgent dispatch, sealed with wax. Kira opened the letter. Her expression darkened. What is it? Ethan asked. From Gareth, in exile. She read aloud, her voice steady but grim. Sister, I warned you the throne would be harder than defeating me. The Council of Clans meets in 3 months. They question a half-human heir. They question your judgment. And there are others moving in shadows. Those who want neither of us on the throne. Watch your back. Watch your consort. Watch the daughter. For I may have been your enemy, but there are worse enemies coming. Stay vigilant. The game is not over. It has merely changed. She looked up, met Ethan's eyes. It's starting, she said. Ethan reached for her hand, his grip steady, strong. The tremor that had plagued him for 2 years was gone. Healed. Then we face it together, he said. She squeezed back. Outside, the night deepened, stars wheeling overhead, the mountain wind carrying the scent of coming storms. Inside, a family held close, ready for whatever came next. Ethan looked at his hands. Steady, still, no hesitation left, just choice. And he'd made his choice. He'd chosen love, chosen courage, chosen this impossible life with this impossible woman and their impossible daughter. And he'd do it again, every time, without hesitation. The fire in the hearth crackled softly. Ethan didn't flinch. The sound was just sound now, not memory, not trauma, just the warmth of home. Kira rested her head on his shoulder. Arya stirred in her sleep, made a small sound, settled again. Together. Always together. Whatever storms came, they would face them. Not alone, never alone again. Alone.